Welcome to another episode of, I don't know why I call this episode, The Breakdowns. First of all, I'd like to apologize before I get into breaking down this particular fight. I'd like to apologize for this whole week. I feel like my energy was off. I felt like I was doing so many things that it affected the quality of my streams. Um, There was a day, I think, to be specific, that I felt like maybe I might have broken down a little bit better than other days, but quite in general, I feel like I was just, what's the word? Um, Underperforming. Actually, that's not the word, but I'll stick with that one. So I sincerely apologize for that. Let's get to the breakdowns of this particular fight. Brunno Ferreira versus Jackson Mcvey. Phew. This fight is honestly very tricky. Largely because you know what, I'm lying. There's no trickiness about this fight. In all sincerity, I don't feel like there's anything tricky about this fight. Um, Jackson McAvee, I know he's undefeated, but I remember breaking down his fight before, and I remember actually stating that I feel like Jackson McAvee has been fighting cans in the regional scene, right? I would have a little bit more confidence in him if he was fighting people with good records. Like the person, Jackson McAvee, out of all his wins, the person who had the highest wins out of all his opponents, a guy who was like four and yeah, who had four wins, right? So to me, that was like come on, man. So his overall his overall what do you call it, record is not necessarily impressive for me. Um, and I wasn't even looking for anything to impress me. Just that in general, I feel like he's been fighting cans in the regional scene. So I generally don't see him doing any better against Bruno Ferreira, especially because there was a point whereby Bruno Ferreira fought Abbas Magomedov, and I genuinely was worried for Abbas Magomedov in that particular fight, largely because I picked about Abbas Magomedov, right? And Abbas Magomedov is pretty decent. So I also think that Ferreira is actually pretty decent. So with that being said, I genuinely feel like this fight is going to end in a TKO or a KO. I don't feel like Jackson McAvee is that good. I think you can look exceptional against horrible talent. You know, it's one thing to be fighting in the regional scene and doing well in the regional scene. Ultimately, we can't blame you if you come into the UFC and like there's no way for anyone to know how good you are. Like when you come into the UFC, if you've been fighting in the regional scene and fighting decent competition. However, in this situation, what do you call Jackson McAvee has not only been fighting in the regional scene, he has been fighting the cans of the regional scene. Maybe can is a strong word, but still he hasn't been fighting good competition in the regional scene. So irrespective of how good he might have looked in the regional scene, it really doesn't mean shit to me, to be honest. Um, in his last fight, I think there was a fight that was scheduled between him and some other guy who was coming in on short notice. And I remember Jackson McAvee being a favorite in that particular fight, and I was one of the people who picked him. I'm glad that fight was cancelled because when I was doing my breakdowns, I was like, damn, this guy has been fighting cans, right? And I generally don't know why everyone was picking him, but it seems like after that, people did a bit of research, and we all are in agreement that he's probably not gonna win this fight. So yeah, I generally don't see Jackson McAvee actually winning this fight. Um, I don't want to say Bruno Ferreira is a lock because you know These guys like to underperform when they have to perform. But I feel like Bruno Ferreira has knockout power. He's been one of the very few consistent prospects, right? Even though he hasn't been delivering on some occasions, but I feel like there's a certain level of opponents that we know that Bruno Ferreira is supposed to beat. And when he's supposed to beat someone, he actually does that, right? And even in those fights that you're like, okay, this is going to be a test for him, he doesn't get outclassed as much, right? Which basically goes to show that he's a pretty decent prospect. I mean, he's lost to only Abbas Magomedov via triangle choke. There's no shame in that. And Nursultan Ruziboyev via counter right and ground and pound, right? There's no shame in losing to Nursultan Ruziboyev and Abbas Magomedov. And he's been doing pretty decently in the UFC. So I don't know, man. I generally would be shocked. Obviously, Jackson McAvee has some level of wrestling, but I don't know if it's going to matter because, like I said, it's easy to look at the Jackson McAvee in the regional scene and be like, "Oh my God, this guy is good," until you realize that the people this guy is fighting do not have a win over four, right? That's insane. Like that's honestly insane. Let me actually try to find the records of the people that Jackson McAvee has been fighting, right? I'm not gonna say Bruno Ferreira is a lock because I still have my doubts about Bruno Ferreira, and honestly, despite the fact that I feel like Jackson McAvee has been fighting cans, we've seen fighters come on the Ultimate Fighter, not Ultimate Fighter, the Contender Series, and they've been fighting cans, and for some reason they actually end up doing pretty decently, right? Um, just because someone has been fighting cans, it doesn't necessarily mean they're not good. Probably maybe they haven't had the opportunity to have good competition. But in this particular situation, I genuinely will be shocked if I really don't give a crap if Jackson McAvee is undefeated. Like it really means nothing to me. Also, it also means very little to me that Jackson McAvee has 100% finishing rate. Okay, it doesn't mean very little to me. There's some more to him having a 100% finishing rate. But hear me out here. These are the people that he has a 100% finishing rate against. Jackson McAfee has 6 wins, right? He's undefeated. In his last fight, the last guy he beat, right, was 4-1, right? Win number one. The guy before that, let me actually double check if this is actually the first. Yeah, this is the last guy. His name was Matayo Ghana. I don't know how to pronounce his name. That guy was 4-1, right? And then before that, he fought the Ben Flower. Ben Flower was 3-2, right? Jacquees Williams, okay, was 7-13. I mean, that's still terrible. I mean, if you are fighting guys who have more losses than wins, I mean, that cannot even count as a win, to be honest. And the guy before that was, wait for it, 1-1. Before that, the guy was 2-5. Before that, the guy was 5-5. Right? The only decent run that he's ever had, I think, was when he was an amateur. He was fighting people who was 5-1, 4-1, 3-0, 2-1. 0-0, 2-1, 1-1. At the very least, when he was an amateur, he was fighting pretty okay competition. But immediately after he became a pro, oh my goodness, the level of competition just significantly dropped. So, in conclusion, I generally think Bruno Ferreira should get a TKO win here. If he doesn't, I'm going to be very disappointed. I genuinely think he should actually win this fight. I don't like to call people I'm not too confident in locks, but Bruno Ferreira shouldn't lose this fight. Otherwise, he should forget about anything, achieving anything in the UFC. This is quite literally a layup, right? So, yeah, that concludes this breakdowns. My subscribers and I are obviously going with Bruno Ferreira. I genuinely don't. I genuinely don't see him losing this fight. Yeah, I have one more fight to go, and then I'll see you guys tomorrow for the watch alongs. I love and appreciate all of you so much. Thank you. Deuces.